I ranked every major index fund in 2026. Nobody paid me to last video. I made you a promise. I said I was going to go through every major index fund available to American investors, pull the actual performance data, check the expense ratios, and give you a straight ranked verdict. No sponsor. No affiliate deal on any of the funds in this video. I want to be completely transparent about that up front, because most index fund comparison videos on YouTube are quietly compensated by the platforms they recommend, and that compensation shapes the verdict, whether the creator admits it or not. This one is not. Nobody paid me to make this video. What I did instead, I spent 2 weeks pulling performance data, expense ratios, tax efficiency records, and minimum investment requirements on every fund that a U.S. investor is likely to encounter when researching the best index funds in 2026. I built a spreadsheet. I ranked them. And I am going to walk you through every conclusion in this video. By the time we are done, you will know exactly which fund belongs in your Roth IRA, which belongs in your taxable brokerage account, which ones are overpriced for what they offer, and which one the financial industry pushes hardest on beginners, and why that recommendation is not always in your interest. Let's get into it. Before I give you any ranking, I want to show you the criteria I used, because a ranking without a methodology is just an opinion. And the methodology is where most of these comparison videos fall apart. 5 criteria, each one chosen for a specific reason. Criterion 1, long-term performance. I looked at 1-year, 5-year, 10-year, and where available, 20-year annualized returns. 1-year returns are the least useful number in investing. They are dominated by short-term market conditions that tell you nothing about long-term quality, but I included them because they are what most beginners see first, and I want to show you how misleading they can be in isolation. The 10-year and 20-year numbers are what actually matter. A fund that has outperformed over 20 years has been tested through multiple full market cycles. Criterion 2, expense ratio, the annual fee expressed as a percentage of assets. This is the number that quietly kills long-term returns. An expense ratio of 0.03% versus 0.09% looks meaningless on an annual basis. Compounded over 30 years on $200,000, it is a difference of over $14,000 in fees paid to the fund company instead of kept as returns.
Expense ratio gets the heaviest weighting in my scoring. Criterion 3, tax efficiency. Specifically, how many capital gains distributions the fund generates annually in a taxable account. Covered this in video 7. ETFs have a structural tax advantage over mutual funds in taxable accounts due to the creation and redemption mechanism. In a tax-advantaged accounts, like a Roth IRA, this criterion scores equally for all fund types. In a taxable account, it becomes decisive. Criterion 4, minimum investment and accessibility. Criterion 5, broker availability and auto-invest support. A fund that requires a $3,000 minimum investment is categorically less accessible than one with a $0 minimum, all other things equal. And a fund that does not support fractional share auto-investing in dollar amounts loses points for the automation use case that most long-term investors rely on. That is the framework. Now let's run the funds through it. The S&P 500 funds are where most investors should start and where most investors will end up staying. These 4 names cover 90% of the conversation. FXAIX, Fidelity 500 Index Fund. Expense ratio, 0.015%. This is not a typo. Less than 2 cents per $100 invested per year. Fidelity achieved this through operational scale and a strategic decision to offer index funds as a loss leader to attract account holders. 10-year annualized return through 2025, approximately 13.1%. 20-year, approximately 10.4%. Both figures are essentially identical to the S&P 500 index itself, as they should be, since that is exactly what this fund tracks. The one limitation, only available to Fidelity account holders. If your brokerage is Schwab, Vanguard, or Merrill, you cannot buy FXAIX there. For Fidelity investors, this is your fund. There is nothing better at this price point. VOO, Vanguard S&P 500 ETF. Expense ratio, 0.03%. Available at every major U.S. brokerage. Tax efficiency is marginally superior to FXAIX in taxable accounts due to its ETF structure, which over decades is worth keeping. 10-year return, essentially identical to FXAIX within rounding error. The difference between owning FXAIX in a Fidelity Roth IRA and owning VOO in a Vanguard Roth IRA over 30 years is statistically negligible. VOO is the standard for taxable brokerage accounts, and for investors whose primary account is not at Fidelity. It is the most widely held ETF in the world after SPY, and unlike SPY, its cost is justified for long-term investors. IVV, iShares Core S&P 500 ETF. Expense ratio, 0.03%, identical to VOO. Managed by BlackRock, available everywhere. Performance over every measurable time horizon is within rounding error of VOO. If your brokerage offers commission-free trading on iShares but not Vanguard ETFs, use IVV. Otherwise, choose VOO and IVV interchangeably. There is no material difference. SPY, SPDR, S&P 500 ETF Trust. Expense ratio, 0.0945%. The oldest ETF in America, the most traded security on Earth on many days by dollar volume, and for a long-term investor, categorically the wrong choice among S&P 500 funds. On $200,000 invested over 30 years, the SPY expense ratio costs you approximately $14,300 more than FXAIX. You are paying 3 times the fee for a fund that tracks the exact same index. SPY exists for institutional traders who need extreme intraday liquidity and tight bid-ask spreads for option strategies. It was never designed for buy-and-hold retail investors. The fact that many brokers recommend it to beginners tells you something about who benefits from that recommendation. Stop. If you are thinking about clicking away right now because you got the FXAIX versus VOO answer, I need you to stay for the next 6 minutes, because the S&P 500 funds we just covered track only the 500 largest U.S. companies. That is approximately 4% of the investable global market. There is an entire second category of funds that most beginners never hear about, and one specific combination of funds that Vanguard's own founder recommended over a pure S&P 500 holding for the majority of long-term investors. And then there is the tier list, the full ranking of every fund we covered today, from S tier to C tier, with the one fund that I think the financial industry is quietly steering too many beginners into. That reveal is at the 9:30 mark. Stay with me. The S&P 500 tracks the 500 largest U.S. companies. A total market fund tracks all publicly traded U.S. stocks, approximately 3,500 to 4,000 stocks. The addition of mid-cap and small-cap companies is the key difference. The central question: does the broader exposure to smaller companies improve returns over time? The data gives a nuanced answer. VTI, Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF. Expense ratio, 0.03%. VTI tracks the CRSP U.S. Total Market Index. It holds approximately 3,600 stocks versus the S&P 500's 500. The top 500 companies still represent about 80% of VTI's total weight, meaning the S&P 500 portion drives the overwhelming majority of its performance. 10-year annualized return comparison. VTI versus VOO from 2015 to 2025 shows VTI marginally underperforming VOO by approximately 0.1 to 0.3% annually, largely because small-cap and mid-cap stocks underperformed large-cap U.S. stocks during this specific window. However, over the prior decade, 2005 to 2015, small caps outperformed, giving total market funds a slight edge. The long-term historical evidence going back 50 years shows total market funds and S&P 500 funds performing within a margin of 0.1 to 0.2% of each other annually. This is not a meaningful performance difference. VTSAX, Vanguard Total Market Index Fund Admiral Shares. Expense ratio, 0.04%. Minimum, $3,000. The mutual fund version of VTI. Identical portfolio, marginally higher expense ratio. The $3,000 minimum is a barrier VTSAX has that VTI does not. For investors with Vanguard accounts who want the total market and prefer the mutual fund structure for automatic dollar amount investing, VTSAX is the choice. For everyone else, VTI is cleaner. The honest verdict on total market versus S&P 500? It does not matter as much as anyone on the internet will tell you. Picking one and automating contributions beats agonizing over the comparison by an enormous margin. If you already own FXAIX or VOO from the last video, do not switch. If you are starting fresh and want the broadest U.S. exposure, VTI is a perfectly sound choice. The U.S. stock market represents approximately 60% of global stock market capitalization. The other 40%, Europe, Japan, emerging markets, Canada, Australia, is accessible through international index funds.
The question of whether to include international exposure in a US-based portfolio is one of the most genuinely debated topics among serious long-term investors. Let me give you both sides without pretending one is obviously correct. VXUS. Vanguard Total International Stock ETF. Expense ratio, 0.07%. VXUS holds approximately 7,700 non-US stocks across developed and emerging markets. It is the international counterpart to VTI. Together, VTI and VXUS form the global market portfolio, the 10-year performance reality. VXUS has underperformed VTI by approximately 3.1% annually from 2015 to 2025. European and Japanese markets have lagged U.S. equity performance significantly in this window. A 100% U.S. investor dramatically outperformed a globally diversified investor over this specific decade. The counterargument: this outperformance is not guaranteed to repeat. From 1970 to 1990, international markets outperformed U.S. markets. From 2000 to 2010, international funds outperformed U.S. funds significantly. Concentration in a single country, even the dominant global economy, is still concentration risk. The founder of Vanguard, John Bogle, recommended no international allocation. His argument: major U.S. multinationals already generate 40% of revenues internationally. You have implicit global exposure through owning the S&P 500. His successor and most academic portfolio theorists recommend 20 to 30% international allocation for true diversification. My verdict: for investors under 40 with a horizon of 20-plus years, a 10 to 20% VXUS allocation alongside a core U.S. position is a reasonable diversification choice that does not sacrifice meaningful expected return for genuine risk reduction. For investors over 50 approaching retirement, the case for simplicity, 100% U.S. through a total market fund, becomes stronger. Quick section, because bond funds come up in every portfolio conversation, and I want to give you an honest framework without spending 10 minutes on it. BND. The Vanguard Total Bond Market, ETF, at 0.03% expense ratio, is the standard bond index fund for U.S. investors. It holds approximately 10,000 investment-grade U.S. bonds across government and corporate issuers. The conventional wisdom: hold your age in bonds. If you are 30, hold 30% bonds. This rule was designed in an era of 5 to 7% bond yields. In the current environment of 4 to 5% yields recovering from near zero, the calculus is more nuanced. My position: for investors under 40 with a 20-plus year horizon, bonds reduce expected long-term return more than they reduce risk over that time frame. The S&P 500's worst 20-year return in history was still positive. A 20-year investor does not need bond protection against short-term volatility. For investors within 10 to 15 years of retirement, adding 20 to 30% BND makes sense as a genuine volatility buffer. For young investors, it is a drag on compounding during the years that compounding matters most. All right, here is the ranking. Every fund we covered today, tiered from S to C, based on the 5 criteria in my methodology. S tier, FXAIX, VOO. A tier, VTI, EVV, VXUS. B tier, VTSAX, BND. C tier, SPY, target date funds. The tier list tells you the quality ranking. This section tells you which index fund to buy in 2026 based on where you actually are. Profile 1. Complete beginner. Open a Fidelity account. Buy FXAIX. Set up automatic monthly investing in dollar amounts. Profile 2. Intermediate investor. Your core position should be VOO or VTI. Pair with VXUS at 15 to 20% if desired. Profile 3. Advanced investor. Hold VXUS in taxable accounts and FXAIX or VTI in Roth accounts. Add factor tilts only if you can maintain them. Profile 4. Investor within 15 years of retirement. VOO or FXAIX as core U.S. equity. VXUS at 15%. BND at 20 to 30% as a bond buffer. Let me bring it home. The index fund landscape is not complicated. The financial industry makes it feel complicated because complexity sells products. The reality is 4 decisions. 1. Fidelity, buy FXAIX. Anywhere else? VOO or EVV. 2. U.S.-only exposure or global exposure through VXUS. 3. Tax-advantaged account, pick the cheapest fund. Taxable account, prefer ETFs. 4. Do not own SPY in a long-term account. There is no scenario where paying 0.0945% for SPY is better than paying 0.03% for VOO or 0.015% for FXAIX on the identical index. Screenshot the tier list. Send this video to someone who asked you recently which index fund they should buy. And subscribe, because the next video is about the math that makes all of this worth doing. Compound interest. The actual numbers behind the formula that turns consistent, boring monthly contributions into life-changing wealth. I will see you there.